And so it begins. The podcast of podcast projects. Reboot. Sunday, March 1st, 3:16 p.m. Implementing a new device and also like a new protocol, sort of behind the scenes. Before I sit down to do a podcast, I'm going to start recording on this phone device. I think, unless it doesn't work. I know that I'll have to play my meditation music from Insight Timer on some other device probably, or I do think I have an old phone that still has a pretty good tape recorder and a halfway decent mic that I might use in this position. But right now I'm using my actual current 2-year-old phone, which is an LG G7. Not that they paid me to say that, and I'm not trying to get sued, but I'm just stating the facts because this is a documentary and thing. What? A docublog. It's an audio journal podcast that is of a documentary type nature, but that is also sort of like branded audio fiction role play also because it's part of a book. It's a whole thing. But this is behind the scenes with you, yourself, and me, my alter ego, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, before I actually start my podcast. This is a weird device I impulse bought at Barnes & Noble, I think. I don't have the box anymore. So the weird noises is me putting the phone in the funky thing. Which hopefully I didn't... now it wants my... No, I don't want to... Why did it stop? Okay, there we go. Oh. Technical issues, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. Okay, cool. It's still recording. Awesome. That worked. So what happened there, to explain, as I also do micro adjustments to the setup, my phone has a thing with the fingerprint, right? Which is supposed to be secure, but it's also what? I don't know. Big Brother-esque and scary. But it's cool, and I'm used to it, and I live in that realm of like, I'm addressing all these things anyways in sort of the documentation of my fictional podcast within podcasts of literary self-motivation development weirdness that I'm doing. So sitting here in my actual real-life bedroom, which I've just done a really weird feng shui thing too that I'd like to address for a hot second for the, behind the scenes things. I was looking at and taking photos of my bedroom in a way that I've like never done before in my entire life because I'm not part of selfie culture. If you've ever dropped in and visited my Instagram in a sort of scope who this Mr. Zeppo is, there are not pictures of my food. There are not pictures of my dogs. There are not pictures of my cats. There are not very many pictures of my my civilian identity and its normal everyday human meat suit face. There are not pictures of my private life very much. But occasionally I do make like my own photo art, right? And sometimes I dick with it, and sometimes I do weird things. And I do intend to actually hope to use my real life surroundings as a model to trace and learn to teach myself to draw, and or maybe just do weird Photoshoppy things with to create like vignette moments and or placement setting doodles for a sort of inception-y self-reference book where someone draws their own doodles, like the character that's making this book up, which is not me, but someone else that is a fictional character that I'm writing about, and does that for themselves as a way to like, I taught myself how to draw, and now I can draw anything I want for my books, because I've always wanted my books to be sort of illustrated, if not quite graphic novel level. Although if I had real life pipe dream all my life since I was a kid, my brother can probably attest to that. If I had money, I would hire people, honestly, and pay them well, so that we would all make lots of money. But no one has bankrolled me yet. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Putting it out there, folks. Asking the universe, please invoke people that be like, I am actually an arts and entertainment producer, and this guy's actually, including in his own weird self-mimetic, self-autodidactically invented podcast format, pitching in real life, but also in fiction, the pitch to like, let's make this a show. Stick with me. The story gets weirder. What was I saying about the bed? Oh, I am not one to ritualistically make my own bed, as anyone in my real life can attest to. And please don't start doing that. That's embarrassing. I don't want to out anybody in my real life, and I don't want anybody in my real life interrupting my art necessarily. Although I don't try to invoke too much of my real life, other than the physical manifest, right? Like, for better or worse, this is the room I live in and will probably stuck in for the rest of my life. Knock on wood. May that be exactly what the goddess's muse intended to be. For if I have a chosen divine entity, it's those ones. Never mind all the ones y'all are arguing about. My God is that lady god, goddesses. So being that kind of person that will not necessarily make the bed as part of my daily ritual, when I do make the bed, I struggle between doing it in the stereotypical, like, boilerplate, standard, basic sense that you are expected to do it in, and that it looks shown on, in model homes and setups in department stores. But when I really, really make the bed for me and want it to look pretty and want it to, like, not be an annoying hassle when I get into bed, I'm a weirdo and I'm a pragmatist and I'm an artful Zenist about, like, making my own private art out of my own life. And of course, gratitude for all the blessings that are my mundane material objects. And all that always inclusive and never to be taken for granted. But even when I slept in humbler conditions than this, friends, which, by the way, does indeed include up to not in a house, not under a roof, in a car and or other places, at certain points in my life, both in real life and in the fiction that I'm writing, because it's not an autobiographic, but it is sort of inspired by what I know. So even when it's simple and humble, I make the bed, quote unquote, to be pragmatically, like, not an annoyance, curiously, to my feet. When in bed and in horizontal, and this is like a character thing that I want to, like, make a funny comedy thing into whatever I write for this character, future tense, and that the character writes about themselves in the fictional sense for the books. That's real, right? Like, I'm actually plagued by this. In my normal life, my feet are meant for walking, and they wear the boots they wear because they make sense. And otherwise, I don't really sense them except for when they're tired and they're letting me know that, like, sitting down or inverting would be a great idea. I understand the language of my own anatomy, right? In terms of some of the obvious ways that it communicates to you. And some of us don't, bless our hearts, bless all our souls. And I'm literally in the middle of doing laundry. So, wow, cool. The Encourager-Meister Zebo does laundry. But I thought he was a robot from this outer space. Why would he do... because I wear clothes. Clothes get filthy. Because these meat suit bodies that we're all in, that may or may not be holograms, or may or may not be actual robots, or may or may not be living fractal flesh pods from a holographic living womb... they, shed and stuff. It's gross. And little things eat that. There's a cosmology of cosmologies of things. And dust is more than dust has ever been allowed to be explained in civil society. But that's a whole other thing. Let's not get lost on that. Right. When I lay down, I otherwise don't give two shits. I'm going to turn off and check out. And 99% of me, it sort of doesn't matter as long as I've got something of a pillow-like situation to prop up my face when I ultimately need to turn over, because no matter how much I lay down on my back, I will not sleep until I do the one big, I don't know if I shift and twist all night long. I probably do, because I'm a turbulent dreamer when I am not participating in ritual use of cannabis, which is an interesting insight. I'll have to do a whole personal blogosphere episode tangent about, because that's a really powerful thing and sort of magical thing in a weird way that I'm going to then fictionalize and turn into surreal, magical surrealism in my literature. Drawing a line, understanding that there's a line where it's like, I don't know that anything like that might be possible, right? To the extent that like I want to do that for the, I guess, need to have CGI in the movie, ultimately. I know that sounds really sarcastic, but isn't it also just sort of true about our media system as it exists? And that'll be awesome, right? Because it'll look cool. I digress. Not about Talandri, about making my bed. My feet, though, are like the 1%. If they can't be a certain place and or way and or orientation, they will hijack and derail and prevent and entirely make it impossible to sleep and rest. And I'm already prone to easy bouts of insomnia. So that's going to be a whole theme that will be like part of the surreal, magical surrealism of this world that I'm creating, which has, dear listeners, for those who may or may not be confused, have not necessarily has a lot to do with directly to the podcasts as they exist, but also totally does for too many reasons. But the reason I'm urgently doing laundry and recording today, which is a first, to be quite honest. I've never thought I'd stoop to this. I mean, I never thought I would experiment with this exploration. No, that's not true. I've always sort of imagined and tinkered with the ideas of what it would be like to do this. But all of a sudden, I'm actually doing it. It's quite wild. Today, a curious nexus has evolved. My real-life sibling, with whom I once, a millennia and a half ago, it seems like, sat around in the living room and used the double-decker tape recorder to, like, sit around and imagineer our own radio show for 2 or 3 weeks, I think. Many, many moons ago, we did that. It was quite a lot of fun. But since then have not really ever collaborated together for all the reasons that two people might not collaborate together, especially two brothers. All forgiven. But he's coming over enthusiastically with quite intensely, which I didn't expect, his entire character's like outfit in the like role-playing sense of the like cosplaying sense of the term. He seriously, and I don't think this is in any way, shape, or form inappropriate of me to just start discussing now, because he knows he's walking into me doing my podcast in my most weird experimental way that I don't think he even quite understands, which I'm only really just now beginning to unleash, right? Like I've only dabbled with it to test some things theoretically, and now I'm going to really launch. 2020 is a new thing, folks, so stay tuned. I hope that with time and leverage, it's going to get weirder and more interesting to listen to, if that's possible. I know that the show is already kind of weird, and hopefully genuinely interesting to listen to. I'm going to pause here for a minute, because I want to do things a little bit more time efficiently than with this whole complex device slung around my face, so that I can hands-free audio record myself. And I'm going to go put this over here next to a thing that I want to take a picture of, but I can't because my camera... That's the one flaw with this device. It sort of doesn't have stuff, gaps ready for the camera, which is a shame. Maybe I'll take a picture of it. Ooh, ideas. Hang on tight, folks. I'm going to go take a picture of this with my iPad. Duh. And then the other thing I already said, 1422. All right. So, audio test. I don't know how well the audience might still be able to hear me as I sort of like theater talk down the hallway super loud. This is really bad for my voice. I shouldn't do this in the podcast all the time. But today, I'm going to do a little bit now. I'm also going to stop. I am excited about so many things on so many levels. So let me document some of that in real life terms. A really cool, groovy friend of mine, relatively new, who's going to be joining us today on the show. Woohoo! As we prep for it. We literally prep for it. This is behind the scenes, technically, not because I'm backstage anywhere, but because I'm actually prepping for a big sort of podcast jam session that I pray to God won't lose my voice in the middle of. So I'm going to start doing that thing that I know I'm supposed to do, which is not yell into my podcast. I just need to talk, because those things are pretty good mics, and I don't need to actually do theater projection all of the time, which some days totally trashes my throat. Okay. How do I hold this so that it doesn't block the camera? Like that. Cool. There's some real life sort of upcycle art that I made next to, or underneath, behind the device that is currently recording the thing that you're listening to, and the neck hands-free impulse buy that I got at Barnes & Noble, which they should have on the shelf all the time still, in my studio where I record my podcasts. And we're going to pause here so I can finish doing laundry stuff. But then we will continue with more actual prepping for the show and getting ready for today's special crossover episode of the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo brand universe and my own sibling brother's up-and-coming weird podcast / whatever you'd call his performance art, which I'm sure he will enjoy telling us all about when he finally gets here today. Be right back. Hang tight. This will go quickly for you because I'm just hitting pause. 3, 2, 1. And actually, can we... How does that fan sound? Can we get it without the fan? Let's do it without the fan, right? Hang on. No fan. Cool. I think that because I'm a crazy person and I'm a theater nerd, I feel like I've got to speak really loud. For the record, my office / recording space is now, I think, at like 89% completion. And to that end, I'm going to start doing sort of some of the meta on it, some of the recordings that are not quite yet the podcast episodes themselves, but will be probably compiled into a podcast episode at some point. And documenting some of the layout and stuff. For better or worse, writing about this and podcasting about it and trying to also sort of as a sort of self-bootstrapping, speak it into existence, maybe sort of manifest it, sort of procedure. This is the room / recording studio / oracle reading consultation office within which I can imagine my fictional character, whose name is not on the tip of my tongue. It also may not be fully decided upon anyways, if I remember in my notes. I had in other words, I've come up with a couple of different options and I'm not sure how to interpret it. If that's just sort of, in one sense, the character has multiple nicknames or multiple stage names or something, or if it's like different iterations of them throughout personal timeline of that character is like reincarnation lineage or something like that, which probably a bit of both, column A and column B. But in theory, where they sort of rehearse themselves into a job to work up to and through their retirement, and maybe not become super bazillionaire famous or anything, but to achieve a sort of dreamlike just enough plus more, a little bit more to be able to pay forward, kick back into those who helped, and help everyone whose lives be a little bit better. Kind of mini media empire. I don't know why I did that weird accent just then. I just did though. Edit, scrub. This character in this book does all that well-intentionedly, meaning to be a sincere and honest, consultant of the, hang a shingle, call yourself a psychic type, but isn't comfortable with the word psychic because they have a thesis, and wherein it's not so much about psychicness, but rather a real tangible thing about the human experience, and that we can interface with a means by which to give words to what might be esoteric and spiritual guidance that might be general or specific to ourselves as individuals and as collectives, vis-a-vis several forms of consciously chosen and intentionally used oracle devices, as it were. Only to think of it, sort of in a humanitarian, in the philosophical sense of humanitarianism, sense that like it works because the mind works in some interesting, fascinating way, and it's all very natural. That some artist drew some pictures that help us feel and inspire thoughts that lead us down some archetypical path because art communicates that way, and it's all real and grounded in reality. But that also accesses a level of it that is sort of maybe kind of a new pulp magic fiction, fictional magic, to be the way Hogwarts is, right? And the way, like, in what show is that I was just watching? Oh, really great show, which, by the way, I'll probably do a session on the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Totally Irrelevant Movie Reviews a little bit in the not too distant future, because I like it so much I want to rewatch it, in which case I might do one of these. Let's just start, hit record, and talk about it, pause, don't catch too much audio, don't get, please don't sue me, I'm just talking about your amazing show to endorse it and nerd out about it and tell people to go watch it. But awesome show. There was a bit there that was just like, Singer, real life, ouch. Right now, I totally just forgot what it was that inspired me to go off on a tangent about that. But I digress. In my own narrative creation, there's this commonality that was cool and neat. It was that, like, the mundane, you discover the surreal and magical sort of hiding right in plain face in the mundane world. In that kind of way, my character, these characters that I'm sort of crafting in one of the too many titles that keep coming to me and want to be real and be written slowly but surely, they represent a magical portal into a place where there's for lack of better references, like Pokemon meets Magic the Gathering / someone's probably already done a tarot battle card Magic Arena thing, and if they have, please don't sue me. I don't know that they have. In a weird nerdy sense of, like, honoring and homaging the whole culture and kind of giving it a little bit of a send up, but anchored in the fact that I am indeed a living organic holographic consciousness matrix mystic. Right? I'm an entheogenic mystic, quite literally, and figuratively, in the sense that some of my characters, and a lot of the influence or the magical stuff that would be written about in a fictional way, mind you, would be inspired by and rooted in the real factual world of such traditions and rites and rituals and
and a working thesis about what may or may not be an explanation about, or a plain word attempt at describing, probably not very accurately in terms that we always strive to improve our understanding and our use of words. What's going on, if there is such a thing as magic, or if there could be such a thing as magic in any way, in a practical way. I digress. So yeah, that's ready to go, and hopefully it'll be an interesting, weird, and organically intuitive crossover kind of episode today, as a relatively newly acquired real life friend and my lifelong real life sibling gathered today in the name of doing podcasts in this weird brand of slightly fictional, slightly totally real, slightly theoretical, slightly about pseudoscience of role playing these choices of my fictional characters out in real life, just for the shits and giggles of seeing what would happen. I welcome any and all interesting commentary and suggestions at all times and at all levels. But also, currently right now, I do indeed genuinely invoke the assistance of spirit guides in all the ways that spirit guides might be participating in the confluence of events in real terms, in my material baseline reality. And I invoke those that may be available to me now, that may be new to in terms of access and conocimiento, as we might say in Spanish, awareness of and or accessibility to, and specifically all those that can be invoked through sheer creation of imagination, as some of the muse-inspired thinking might go. Especially in terms of like what I'm experimentally practicing myself, which would be like the real life version of what will become the fictional, but as close to real life version of things that are at the heart of my literary universe. To that end, I consecrate today for true life, creativity, authenticity of flow, and a recognition of answering to a higher calling, in which entertainment is also sort of a, like, experimental exploration of that which might be worthy of exploring, esoterically speaking, if one may use that word casually. Let's see how it goes. As some people are fond of saying, let's see how it goes.